There's a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. Thune.
Aye.
Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Cassidy.
Aye.
Mr. Cassidy, aye. Mr. Langford.
Aye.
Mr. Langford, aye. Mr. Daines.
Aye.
Mr. Daines, aye. Mr. Young. Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tillis, aye. Mrs. Blackburn. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Marshall. Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. Wyden.
No.
Mr. Wyden, no. Ms. Cantwell.
No.
Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Ms. Hassan. Ms. Hassan, no. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Ms. Warren.
No.
Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Sanders.
No.
Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Smith.
No.
Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Lujan.
No.
Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Warnock.
No.
Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Welch.
No.
Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Chairman. Chairman votes aye. Mr. Chairman, the final tally is 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was. Would the clerk please restate the vote?
Mr. Chairman, the final tally was 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was 14-13. The nomination is reported favorably. We will now turn to other senators who would like to make a statement. Since I asked my Republican colleagues to hold off at the outset, I'll go to the Republican side next. First, Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted aye today, and I want to just briefly explain why. I believe in my 65 years, I'll be 65 in August, that Mr. Kennedy will be one of the first people.
We have been watching the Senate Finance Committee vote on Robert F. Kennedy's nomination to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. It is very rare these days on Capitol Hill that you go in to a hearing or a business meeting like this and don't really have an idea how it's actually going to land. All eyes were on one senator, Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican of Louisiana, and just 2 minutes before the committee started its vote, Cassidy posted on X, "I've had very intense conversations with Bobby and the White House over the weekend and even this morning. I want to thank Vice President J.D. Vance specifically for his honest counsel. With the serious commitments I've received from the administration and the opportunity to make progress on the issues we agree on, like healthy foods and a pro-American agenda, I will vote yes." You see Cassidy walking out of the hearing room now. The vote was 14-13. This is a major step forward for Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nomination to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, a major victory for the Trump White House and for President